Today on the Inside Scoop, Texas is barely inside the top 20, but I'm going to lay out a path for them to finish with the top 5 class. Miami pulls off a massive surprise, but first, we're going to talk Florida State. The Seminoles, they're making a little noise on the recruiting trail, but can they pull off a real shocker and land 2 5-star DBs? We're going to get to that in a minute. FSU has landed 7 commitments since July 1st. So for this segment, let's welcome in Michael Langston of War Chant, and let's look at what they did last week. A little Thursday, Friday, Saturday action. FSU on a run with offensive tackle Jonathan Daniels, offensive tackle Ty Hilton. Then on Saturday, 4-star athlete Makai Danzy. Mike, Jonathan Daniels goes 6'4", 275. How was FSU able to land him? Because early on it looked like LSU, then Georgia brings him in on official, Kentucky brings him in on official. What was the key here for FSU?
I think the big key for them is the consistency of the way they recruited him, and two, the relationship with what Alex Atkins does with offensive linemen, his development, even with young guys, really resonated with Jonathan from the start. It was just I felt confident even when I was hearing noise about LSU and even Georgia and Kentucky was in there, but I think it was a different feel when you listen to Jonathan talk about FSU, and Atkins was on a different level. It's close to home. It's not far in the development. Like I said, I think his development and his way he resonated and connected with Jonathan was on a different level.
Yeah, a day later, they land 6'4.5", 285-pound offensive tackle Ty Hilton, another pillar to that offensive line class. And then Saturday, hey, you got to find somebody to run behind all these big men. So Makai Danzy, he pulls the trigger, 6'1", 175, the number 7 ranked athlete in America. What does FSU see in Danzy?
I think when you watch his game a lot, you see a lot of LT, and I say LT like Lawrence Tuafili. You see a long strider. He does a lot of things. Now the difference is, like, you can cue the band when Danzy gets in the open field because he is gone. He has got electrifying speed. Probably the fastest kid at running back out of high school they've recruited since Dalvin Cook. Guy's got big wheels. I mean, he can take it the distance, and he's improved a lot on, if you watch a lot of his junior stuff, of what he does inside, running between the tackles. We did a few pieces with him. Got up with Jared Hickman, his head coach, and he was kind of breaking down some of the things that he's improved on. But I think he gives you a home run hitter at that running back position. It's a great compliment to Cam Davis, who they already have, because he's more of a power, quick and space guy. So I think it's kind of what they've done when you look at the running back position. They like to have diversity with different guys having different skills. They're going to use like 4 or 5 this year. So you've seen that, what David Johnson likes to do, and this is just kind of the final finish to that running back class to get these 2 guys in the fold.
Yeah, I like it. Cam Davis is built like a boulder with muscles, and then you get Makai Danzy, who's a bona fide track guy to kind of run that thunder and lightning in the FSU backfield. So the Noles now have 18 commitments. They pop inside the top 10 for really the first time all summer. They're currently sitting at number 9. But Mike, a few big pieces on the board, and they're coming off soon. Let's start with 5-star cornerback Charles Lester. He's set to decide July 28th. Now, I have my prediction in for FSU for Lester, and all kind of signs point to FSU right now, but I'm sure Nole fans are not feeling confident right now. Nothing's done until the announcement's been made. Who do you think right now is the biggest competition on decision day for Charles Lester?
Yeah, we've been here before, haven't we? Travis Hunter. I think that makes people like Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street kind of scared. That you see that, and I've always said from the start with everybody, even with Alabama and Georgia in there, that Colorado for me was always the one where you're talking about a single parent family for Charles Lester. Dion does a great job in that kind of situation, and I think for me it's always been Colorado is the biggest threat because one, he just got the 2 best cornerbacks in a row, I think, Kamani McLean and Travis. So certainly there's a threat, and Dion does good with defensive backs, but I'm not totally sold that Charles ends up playing DB. I think it wouldn't shock me in the end if he played a receiver just because he loves that position, even though he said DB all the time. But I feel good about where FSU sits going into that July 28th event, but certainly, you still have to, feel not at ease when Dion's involved and you have Colorado right there and what they do with defensive backs. But I think they're in a pretty good position there.
Yeah, that's going to be a commitment announcement that everybody in the country is going to have their eyes on just to see if there's a chance of a surprise there. All right, we're going to talk about five-star KJ Bolden. He's making his announcement August 5th. But what I need FSU fans to do right now is like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. FSU fans, we got a lot more FSU recruiting coming, so subscribe right now. All right, the big one on the board, five-star DB, KJ Bolden, the number one safety in America. He has set his decision date for August 5th, and Director of Recruiting for On3, Chad Simmons, had this to say about 3 days ago about his recruitment. Quote, "The school that has quickly become one to watch a little closer, though, is Florida State. In recent days, the buzz around the Seminoles has picked up significantly." Mike, why has the buzz picked up when it comes to FSU and KJ Bolden?
Yeah, so right before Chad put this on, our beat writer, Matt Lassier, came on there and it's like, look, guys, we're hearing that there's more of a chance. FSU's very much in this than what people are putting on. Then Chad put up his thing, and I had been hearing, like, probably the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've been hearing, first when I heard, like, yeah, whatever, like Georgia, come on, Georgia, Ohio State's been the teens, but then it started getting louder, the noise is getting louder, and it was from some consistent people that I trust in intel. So I think barely the big reason was that second visit he took, even in the summer. Really, he saw kind of the connection he would have with the program. Obviously, FSU's a dream school, but I don't think that's it. I think it's more what this program is evolving to, what he's seeing as far as what they do in practice, the way they practice, the way they work, and that has resonated with him. And then also seeing kind of, putting it back in his mind what Jamie Robinson did a year ago under this system at that safety position. It really resonated with him. And I think for FSU, they need to give him a reason to come to FSU. And I think that really moved the needle on that visit and just resonated more so than a lot of places that he's seen so far. Even the Ohio States and the Georgia, I think it just resonates with him. And they're right there. Now they got to finish the job, but I think the momentum right now is with FSU based on the intel I've heard throughout the recruitment.
But what about the fact that he has not taken an official visit to Florida State? Now, I know the visit numbers are there along with the other schools. Like, he's been to Tallahassee as much as he's been to some of these other places, but took an official to Georgia, took one to Clemson, took one to Ohio State, took one to Alabama, none to Florida State. What does that mean to you?
I mean, obviously you want him to get on campus for an official visit, but at the same time, KJ's indicated to us several times, like, I think he really wants to use that official for a game. I think even more so, and we've saw that with a lot of recruits, like, they want to see this product themselves for their own eyes. So I don't think he wanted to use that until they play, the Miami down the line. That's a game that he mentioned to me when we interviewed him after the visit. But certainly official visits are more detailed. You can get a lot done. You can make a bigger impact. I think long as the visits keep flowing, I think he's took like 2 or 3 to FSU. I think that's really the thing. As you've said many times, Josh, follow the visits. And as long as they keep visiting, I think the impact is still going to be there for FSU. And it has been with what they've done, both off the field and on the field. On the field, yeah, they've moved the needle, but also there's a connection that certain guys look for from a culture standpoint that really resonates and even pushes the needle farther. And I think that's what happened with those last 2 visits to FSU with KJ Bolden. I think they're a real threat.
All right, Mike. Well, it's going to be a wild 7-day stretch for FSU fans as they have a chance to land 2 5-star DBs. Mike, thanks for dropping by the Inside Scoop, talking a little FSU with us today.
Anytime, man.
Miami landed their top-rated commit in the 24 class in surprise fashion. We're going to discuss how Miami was able to pull that off. Also, take a look at their defensive line recruiting and where things stand with 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. Let's bring on Azubi Charles with Kane Sport for this segment. How did top 50 wide receiver Jashiza Trader fly under the radar and commit to Miami on Thursday without anybody having any idea that he was going to make his decision?
Yeah, well, interviewing Josiah, these past 2 years, he's kind of the guy that kind of keeps a lot of things to himself. So just hearing him make this surprise decision isn't too surprising to me. With him, he's always been a quiet guy, not really talking, giving a lot of information about his recruiting. But Miami's been recruiting him for the better part of 4 years now, and it kind of finally paid off. I spoke with his head coach, Damian Jones, at Chaminade Madonna, and he was pretty much telling me, like, hey, I'm not too surprised at the decision, but I thought it was going to come earlier, which is something that surprised me. But Miami's efforts of recruiting Josiah Trader really, really paid off with him announcing that surprise decision Thursday. And really big for their recruiting class, with the momentum they're trying to build in July and keep it going in August and through the season.
Yeah, and this was a big three battle primarily. Florida State, Florida, Miami. What do you think it was in the end for JoJo Trader to pick the Canes?
I think it was that home field. His family had a really, really big part in this decision, specifically his mother. She's in Miami, obviously. She lives there. His family is there. So I asked him, what was the biggest thing for him? He said, I wanted to be home and I'm home. So I feel like that home field, staying in his backyard, being comfortable in Miami was the biggest factor of his decision staying and playing for the Hurricanes.
So JoJo Trader, the number 9 ranked wide receiver in America, commits to the Canes. Now I'm going to ask you, does this help with holding on to fellow 4-star wide receiver Miami commitment Chance Robinson? Because I know primarily the Florida Gators have been after him, trying to flip him.
Yeah, I really do think it does help Miami with that because they all played on the youth football program called the Miami Gardens Ravens. And I believe there's 6 players in that 2024 class currently committed to Miami that play for that youth program. And I spoke with their head coach, Rod Mack, who's a former Hurricane, and he told me the biggest thing with, keeping these local guys home, keeping these guys that all played on that youth team together is their brothers recruiting him. And with now JoJo part of the class, Chris Wheatley Humphreys, another guy that played for the Miami Gardens Ravens, Chance Robinson, and a bunch of other guys. I feel like they're trying to kind of rebuild this youth program that was a dominant powerhouse back in their day at the collegiate level, played together at Miami.
Yeah, I figured it might help kind of another hometown wide receiver being committed. So I'm going to ask you next, is it going to help with Jeremiah Smith? But before I do that, Miami fans, do me a favor right now. Like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We got a lot more Miami recruiting to cover. So right now, Azubi, tell me, 5-star wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, he's committed to Ohio State. Does JoJo Trader, who's also teammates with them at Chaminade Madonna High School, does it help with the flip chances for Miami here?
I really do think it does. Honestly, I feel like you need everything in your book to try to flip Jeremiah Smith, and having his teammate, his lifelong best friend in that class now really does help them. But I feel like the biggest thing with Miami's attempts to flip Jeremiah Smith is showing that they can produce receivers at a high level, just like Ohio State has. Obviously, they can't replicate what Brian Hartline's done over the years there, but this year will be crucial for Miami to show, hey, I know you want to go somewhere else, but stay home. We can produce at a high level. Shannon Dawson has produced wide receivers at his previous stops and Tank Dell in his time at West Virginia. So this year, I feel like will be very, very critical for Miami to showcase that, hey, we can produce high-level guys. Stay home, stay with your best friends, put on for your hometown. That's a big thing that, a lot of these South Florida kids, think about. I want to, make my hometown team great rather than going somewhere else and doing it. So I feel like adding JoJo Trader to the mix is very, very helpful for the Hurricanes, but the biggest thing is showing that they can produce high-level receivers in Miami for Jeremiah Smith to potentially flip to the Hurricanes.
Yeah, it's a big addition, and it also shows that, hey, there's big-time recruits that are considering the Miami Hurricanes. We're going to talk about 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo here in a minute, but I want to switch gears and talk a little defensive line recruiting. Last week, Miami picked up 4-star defensive lineman Artavius Jones, the number 166 best player overall. That was on Friday. He's an important piece in the class to go along with 4-star edge Marquise Lightfoot and Dalen Russell on that commit list. Let's start at the top of this list with 5-star edge Colin Simmons. He took an official visit to Miami earlier in June. Azubi, where do things stand right now with Miami's chances at landing 5-star edge Colin Simmons?
Yeah, with Colin Simmons, he kind of took a surprise, unofficial visit to the spring game to Miami, and then, took that official visit in June. And when we spoke to him after that official visit, he says he left Miami with no questions. They answered everything that he wanted to know. And with, that situation, I feel like it's a real battle between a lot of SEC programs trying to lure him to an ACC and Miami school. But I think things are, I wouldn't say, Miami's, trending for him right now, but they're not, outside looking in. I feel like they're kind of in the mix with everything. Obviously, like I said, schools like Texas, LSU are kind of the leaders for his recruitment right now. But I feel like Miami's giving him something to think about, specifically with that Jason Taylor connection. A lot of these defensive linemen, they're always saying, their biggest interest in Miami's come from Jason Taylor. And I feel like that's the case with Colin Simmons as well. So not saying Miami's trending, but I'm not saying Miami's completely out the picture with Colin Simmons. Kind of somewhere in the middle where, hey, if something goes well during the season, I can see, Colin Simmons giving Miami an extra look or something like that. But I feel like they're kind of in the mix right now with him.
How about Dylan Stewart? Now, he's kind of said that he's going to make a decision before the season starts, but he's also told me when he was here in Nashville that he was going to take it the distance. So I know Miami's kind of sitting in the same spot with Dylan Stewart. They're definitely a sleeper team that you got to watch, but maybe a South Carolina or even an Ohio State is considered the favorite. Which bodes better for Miami, an August decision, or if he takes this thing the distance and decides in December?
I feel like taking the distance type of thing for Miami, because with obviously coming off a 5-7 season, you don't have much to showcase guys saying, hey, we did this last year, we did blah, blah, blah last year. I feel like if Miami can show what they can do this year with, defensive line like Ruben May, a freshman, or Jaden Wayne has a good season, guys in that 2024 class will start looking at Miami and say, hey, these young guys are coming in and, making an impact in their first year and being a vital part of this defense. So I feel like the combination of, obviously Jason Taylor showcasing, his coaching ability and these kids actually performing, that'll be better for Miami in the long run if, things come down to December commitment, things like that.
Right. Another exciting name on the board is the number 2 rated defensive lineman in America, 5-star David Stone. Again, with him, there was so much buzz throughout the spring. Remember when he made those back-to-back visits, brought his mom on the second trip, and there seemed to be a lot of traction with Miami. Then he comes in for an official visit. But now that we're in mid-July, where do things stand with David Stone in Miami?
Yeah, with David Stone, every time I kind of think about that situation, it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes I think, Miami has this, this guy's Miami's, and then, oh, no, back down and up and down, up and down. Like you mentioned, those 2 back-to-back unofficial visits in the spring, and then his official visit in June. Right now, I feel like it's kind of stale. I'm not stale, but kind of just stagnant with that. Obviously, the dead period contact isn't, where it should be, or where, teams can actually reach out to players. But I feel like with this one, it's a battle between Oklahoma, Michigan State, and Miami. And I do say this because this third unofficial visit was the Mario Cristobal pool party that kind of everyone knows about. And I talked to him after that, and I was like, so, your third time here, just what have you seen? Obviously, you've seen everything that you possibly can see, just has anything changed? And he said he saw a side of Miami that he's only seen at Michigan State and Oklahoma, with the familiarity with the guys, seeing the coaches away from the facilities and things like that. So right now I feel like things are kind of, stand still with David Stone. He hasn't really been saying much. After his official visit, he really didn't say much. But I feel like if come season, if he gets another trip to Miami, that'll be very, very big for them and kind of rebuilding momentum, because they had momentum in the spring, lost it a little bit, picked up momentum in the summer with the official visit, kind of lost it a little bit. So I feel like getting him back on campus would kind of be the biggest thing for Miami in their city.
Yeah, it really has been a roller coaster ride for David Stone. I mean, there's been moments where it felt like, boy, he might be ready to commit to Miami. And then a couple weeks later, he's at Oklahoma or something, and Miami's in the rearview mirror. So I agree with you, though. I do think Miami probably needs to get him back on campus in order to kind of seal that deal with him. But he's at IMG Academy, so it's not too far away from campus. All right, let's switch over to defensive lineman Aiden Breland, another 5-star defensive lineman on Miami's D-line board. He goes 6'4.5", 320 pounds. He's the number 26 ranked player overall. Now, he's out of California, Zuby. Do you think that Miami has a shot at landing him?
Yeah, so this one's kind of interesting. Like you mentioned, he's out on the West Coast, but when I spoke with him during his first unofficial visit to Miami in March, he said Mario Cristobal was his first offer in 8th grade when he was at Oregon. So that's kind of the connection they have there. And I asked him, how important is that for you, seeing a guy that offered you in 8th grade and now you're back on campus, going into your senior year. He said that's huge, him keeping his word, him continuing to have faith in his production and things like that. And Breland added Miami to his top 10 schools, and he's hoping to he took an official visit to Miami. He really liked it, but kind of now he's waiting, figuring things out. But I feel like that connection that, they had back in the 8th grade, obviously a long time ago, but I feel like that small thing is kind of keeping Miami's chances alive. And if they can show him a few other things and his relationship with Cristobal, they might have a shot at Aiden Breland.
Yeah, some really good defensive linemen on the board. Could be an epic class this year for Miami in the trenches. We'll see how this all plays out. All right, I teased at the top, 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. He set a commitment date of December 20th. So I want to know, does the late decision, does that bode well for Miami? Does it hurt Miami? And where do things stand right now with Wingo and the Canes?
So with that late decision, I think it's the best possible scenario for Miami. With Wingo, I spoke with him about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he pretty much told me, since Kevin Beard arrived on campus, his recruitment is kind of amped, and he's kind of put Miami back in the picture. Kind of said, previously the other coaching staff wasn't recruiting him as hard, but Kevin Beards came in and really amped up things. And it's kind of funny. Before I spoke with him, I was speaking to somebody on staff in Miami talking about the receiver class, and they're like, if you could pick 4 receivers to, have a dream, 2024 receiving class, who would it be? I gave a few names. One name I didn't give was Wingo, and at the end of the conversation, they said, "What do you think about Ryan Wingo?" And that kind of turned my head. I'm like, okay, Ryan Wingo's a big name, but not too familiar with him, and didn't think Miami was really in the picture with him. Speaking with him, he says that. So I really think if he gets that later decision, which he plans on doing, that's great for Miami, because he did say that he wanted to see production from the wide receivers and see if they can produce elite level guys like the other schools that are recruiting him. So I feel like if Miami has a big year on that offense side of the ball, receivers produce, Miami could be right in the picture with Ryan Wingo.
Yeah, and I think Wingo is generally open right now. I mean, you got Georgia, you got Tennessee, you got Texas, you got Miami. There's a lot of programs still involved with Ryan Wingo's recruitment. So, yeah, I do agree. I think this kind of, where Miami's sitting with him right now, I do think they can get him back on campus in the fall, show him a good time, and they'll have a shot to land him. So, all right, Zuby, great job on your debut on the Inside Scoop. Thanks for stopping by, talking a little Canes recruiting with us.
Thanks for having me today, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Texas is looking like they have what it takes to finish with a third straight top 10 class. But that doesn't cut it for Texas fans. They want a top 5 class this year, and I see a path where the Longhorns can do just that. But first, here's a few names that will be committing this week. Let's take a look at defensive lineman DeAndre Robinson. He's the number 35 ranked defensive lineman in the country and the 406th best overall. Then just 2 days later, we got Corian Gibson. He'll be committing on July 22nd. He's a 4-star, the number 8 ranked cornerback in the country, number 73 overall. So DeAndre Robinson commits on July 20th. He's 6'3.5", 315 pounds. And Texas holds all the cards for him heading into his decision. They are trending heavily, but it looks like UF is the top competition. The Gators are just kind of hanging around in this one. But you gotta be aware if you're a Texas fan, because DeAndre Robinson is from Orlando, Florida, and the in-state Gators are making a run on him. Now, 2 days later, after Robinson announces, Corian Gibson will set to make his decision on July 22nd. He's the number 8 cornerback in the country, number 73 overall. And this one really comes down to Clemson or Texas. Now, there's a couple other teams involved, but it seemed like when he took that early June visit to Clemson that a commitment could be coming soon. Kind of the emotions of the visit ran out, and Corian Gibson now looks like he is all Texas. We got to see what happens here in these final few days. You never know what could shake out. I like where Texas sits right now for Corian Gibson, but Texas fans are looking for more. Last year was a top 3 finish. They're currently sitting at number 19 right now, and I'm going to show you how the Texas Longhorns could end up finishing with a top 5 class. You see, UGA currently has number 1 on lock. They're essentially a lock to finish number 1. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that. Ohio State, they're sitting at 2 or 3. I think that's where they finish. Probably 3 at the lowest, but most likely number 2. After that, really, everything in the class rankings is up for grabs. Of the 18 teams ahead of Texas on Sunday morning, 6 already have 20 commitments or more. 5 teams have 18 commitments or more. That means Texas has plenty of room to ascend up the rankings with maybe as many as 12 spots still left to fill. So let's take a look at some of the big names on the board for Texas as we come towards the end of summer. You got edge, 5-star edge Colin Simmons, 5-star cornerback Kobe Black, 5-star offensive tackle Brandon Baker, 5-star defensive lineman Dominic McKinley, and 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. Whew, that is a lot of stars still on the board for Texas. Let's start at the top with Colin Simmons, the number 1 edge in the country. He visited Texas for an official visit on June 23rd. Also took trips this summer to Alabama, SMU, and Miami. Simmons has not set a commitment date, and I don't think he's in any rush because he has an LSU official visit set for late November. In the end, I think this is a very winnable battle for Texas. I think early on, he said that it was LSU and Texas at the top. I do think Texas is at the top. I don't know right now if LSU is as good of a spot as Texas is. I think the Longhorns' main competition is going to come from in-state Texas A&M. In the end, I know the Aggies aren't in a great spot right now, but I do think that Colin Simmons, when it comes to his decision, location does matter. I think A&M will be a player by the end of this. Now let's move on to five-star corner Kobe Black. He is a Texas lean, has been one for a while, but he's not ready to end it. He has official visits set to Texas A&M and LSU in the fall. Right now, I would say he's Texas's to lose. Now, the question is, can they close him out before the summer ends? They don't have to, but I think Texas would feel a lot better if Kobe Black, five-star corner, was on their commit list heading into the fall. But it looks like right now they're still going to be battling it out. I do like Texas there. Offensive tackle, the five-star offensive tackle. Sorry, Brandon. Five-star offensive tackle Brandon Baker goes 6'5", 300 pounds. There is a possibility that he ends this by the end of summer. He hasn't set a commit date right now, but it is a possibility that a decision could come before the fall. Now, he did take a visit, an official visit to Texas in June, but I kind of feel like Texas they're in the race, but maybe not in the same spot that a team like Oregon is in. Baker's taken numerous visits to Oregon, and I think he's expected back there by the end of July. We'll see what happens. I think the key here, Texas needs Brandon Baker to take this into the fall and then also make it back to campus before he makes that final decision. Let's move on to five-star defensive lineman Dominic McKinley, 6'5", 280 pounds, out of the state of Louisiana. McKinley's not expected to make his decision anytime soon, and LSU is working hard to keep him home. Now, last year, LSU let 6 of the top 10 players in the state go. They didn't sign with LSU. The Longhorns are hoping Dominic McKinley follows that trend. He took official visits to Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M in June. Still has some more left on the board. I think the Sooners are hanging around. Texas is hanging around. We'll see where this one goes. Moving on to five-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo out of the state of Missouri. Now, when he stepped on campus, it seemed like a bit of a long shot. When he left, Jerry Hamilton told me, hey, Texas has a puncher's chance here. And I think the latest move that Ryan Wingo made, setting his commitment date for December 20th, definitely helps Texas because they needed to get him back on campus. They needed to have a strong showing in the fall. And now with Ryan Wingo not making a summer decision, he's going to take this thing all the way to the December signing day. I do think that Texas, they sit in a position where they are able to strike and possibly land a five-star talent like a Ryan Wingo. But like I said, I think the key is to get him on campus a time or two before he makes that final decision. All right, so there it is. There's a path there for Texas to make a run at a top 5 class. I think what we need to remember right now, if you're Texas fans thinking, oh, we're at 19 right now, how are we going to make it into the top 5? Well, there's only 14 commitments, and as I said earlier, a lot of teams are already at 20, a lot of teams are at 18, so there is still significant space to fill at Texas, and we just got to see, do they finish top 10 or top 5? Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.